Now let's go through the process of selecting objects within 3ds Max. Now selecting objects can be as simple as left-clicking on an object. So when you hover over an object, notice how it highlights, and if I left-click, that object will select. If I want to select multiple objects, I can hold down the Shift key. And again, hover over an object and select it. So I can select as many objects as I want by holding down Shift. Now Shift also acts as a toggle. So if I continue to hold down Shift and left click on another object, it will deselect. So I can toggle this object on or off just by holding down the Shift key and left clicking. Now if I want to deselect everything, all I have to do is left click on nothing. Now we can also select by region. So we have this pull down here, which allows us to select the type of region. I'm going to go ahead and start with rectangular selection region, and then left click and drag, and anything that falls within that box gets selected. Now if I want to, I can hold down the Shift key and continue to add objects. Now we also have multiple shapes that we can use for this selection region. So we have a circle, we have a polygon, so all I have to do is left click and drag, and then just continue to left click to select them, and double left clicking ends that selection. So again, left click and drag, left click, left click, left click, double left click, and there we go. Now we can also do what's called a lasso selection, which is a little bit more interactive. So again, I can just lasso around that object to select it. And then we also have what's called a spray paint selection. So I left click and hold, and this circle determines my selection. So anything that crosses over that circle gets selected. And as with any selection, I can left click off of that to deselect. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my selection region back to rectangular. And then right next to this, we have a very important button, and that's the window crossing. Do we want objects that are crossing over the window to be selected? Now by default, it's on this mode. So when I left click and drag to create this selection area, anything that falls within that area will get selected. It doesn't have to be entirely within it. Now if we change this and I do the same thing, nothing will get selected. The object has to be totally within the box in order to be selected. So again, I can select these two, and even though this was over the edge, it doesn't get selected. And again, we can change that so that anything that falls within or even touches that box gets selected. Now another way to select objects is by name. So I can go to this tool here, which allows me to select by name. So I can select objects simply by left clicking on them, or I can select multiple objects either by shift selecting or control selecting. So if they're not in sequential order, I can control select multiple ones. Now another way to select multiple objects is to use this pull down menu here. So we can select it so I can only select geometry, but I can also select it so that maybe I only select lights. So that way, when I left click and drag over these, I don't actually select these because my selection is only looking for lights. If I zoom out a little bit, you'll see that I actually do have some lights in this scene, and I can left click and drag over those lights or over everything, and only those lights get selected. Now if I switch that over to geometry and did the same thing, just the chairs would be selected. Or if I go to all, then everything is selected. So there are a number of great ways to select objects in 3ds Max.